Hey there, welcome to the Impatient Entrepreneur Podcast, a show where we hear from entrepreneurs and business owners who are chomping at the bit to make their mark on the world. I'm your host, Lauren Cockrell. Now, let's hurry up and get to the good stuff. Hi, friends. I'm really looking forward to today's conversation. I am being joined by Robert Whittaker, who recently came into my life as one of my coaches through EO, Entrepreneurs Organization, and their accelerator program. And he was immediately in my corner, making me feel seen and like I wasn't alone. He's super savvy when it comes to business and leadership, and I know he'll have some gems for all of us today. So welcome to the show, Robert.
Hey, thanks for having me on. That was a very generous and polite intro for sure. And I've gotten so much out of our relationship, as much as it sounds like you have as well.
Well, thank you. Yeah, I feel like we almost had our own little like Step Brothers movie moment. Or like, are we best friends?
Yep. We did. It was good. And I think all in perfect timing. I'm not sure I would have been the right person a year ago or anything like that. And so I think it just aligned perfectly.
I think so. So will you tell our listeners about yourself? And you've got a couple entities, so as much or as little you'd like to share about either or both of those.
Yeah, sure. I think that the key is that everybody knows that I've never taken a check from anybody else, other than, I guess, collecting a check on a job site. But I've always written my checks, my payroll checks. And so I'm a serial entrepreneur. I've pretty much always been in construction, whether it be landscape or outdoor construction. And I've always had a passion for coaching and consulting. And but I knew I needed to put some miles between me and when I first started. And so I've just recently landed on Purple Coaching and Consulting. It was a passion project of mine, and it just took off. I knew I had a good story. I've met some incredible people, and I think there's a huge interest for learning right now. And so I don't want to miss that opportunity, helping people scale. And so I spend about half my day right now at Magnolia Fence Patio, and then half my day at Purple Coaching and Consulting, growing outdoor construction companies in a similar field as Magnolia Fence Patio. Although I'm skilled and able to coach anybody in any industry, I can relate, obviously, in the outdoor world. So that's my elevator speech, I guess. I'm 38 and I have a kiddo on the way, and I have a 10-year-old who's seen my businesses evolve to where they're at. And I hope one day to hand them off to him. So, yeah.
Beautiful. And so I think you are my first guest to have never had a job. So that's fun. Like you graduated from college and just immediately were off to the races doing your own thing.
That was not the plan at all. So, I mean, in high school, I think we've all had that side business or side hustle.
Sure.
Did just enough to where the mom felt like she should continue to pay her allowance or whatever else. And I remember very clear, I was making about $30,000 a year, and I was like, I'm not going to go to college. I'm teaching goalie training. I'm super good at it. I'm like happier than I've ever been. Obviously, 30 grand at 17 or 18 was a lot of money back then.
Yeah.
And I was like, well, I'll go to college. And I couldn't find a job. I was like minimum wage. I needed to work. Like, what do I do with my hands? And nobody would hire me. So I was like, well, I'm going to cut grass again. And so I grew a business, sold it, grew a party rental business, sold it. And when I graduated college, I was like, I'm going to go in a skyscraper. I'm going to live out of a suitcase. I'm going to fly 1 million miles a year. Like everything most people say they don't ever want to do. But I wanted to be stuck on an airplane my entire life. Like I just, yeah. And immediately started my landscape company and my construction company, and never pursued it, never applied to anybody, but it just always interests me. So now with the coaching and consulting, I get to chase my dream of being on an airplane. I chase my dream of living out of a suitcase. I obviously have a reason to make it home. And so that's been, a balance. And of course, since I own Purple Coaching, I get to decide when I fly. But I'm getting some of that now. And so although I'm not in a suit, I'm fulfilling my dream of traveling the world, or at least the United States, to do that. So, so that's how I ended up where I'm at.
Gotcha. I love how
So
your dream was, being in an airplane and you founded very terrestrial
yeah,
businesses.
yeah, yeah. I don't know, um, like Suits, with Ari walking around with his BlackBerry and all. It's like that
Yeah.
was super cool. Or I mean, well, Suits was different. I guess Ari was the entourage, right? And then
Yeah.
Suits. And so I was just like all intrigued with all the hustle
Mhm.
and everything like that. And of course, that's like totally just showbiz.
Yeah.
Um, and so, yeah, so I'm happy. I've got 4 flights booked for the next 30 days. And
Okay.
so my bucket is full. None of them are for vacation, but I try and find a little bit of vacation in every trip we do. So,
Yeah. Yeah. Good. Good.
anyways.
Well, so the first question I like to ask every guest is, are you an impatient entrepreneur?
Oh yeah. When I saw the title, I was like, my goodness, like you could just sell that name off and probably be, I mean, incredible. Yeah. Definitely been told I'm impatient. I think I'm gonna run with this for a second because I've
Yeah.
been thinking about this. I I think half the reason why business owners don't stay in their lane is because they're impatient, right? So it's not
Mm.
that I'm not trusting somebody. I just like want to get there faster because I can't wait to see the results.
Yeah.
And if they're not good results, I can't wait to fix them because we like to fix things too. And so when I
Mhm.
saw impatient entrepreneur, I was like, oh my goodness, this sums in 2 words sums most of us up. So
I'm
yes,
glad
I
it
very
resonated.
oh yeah, I was like brilliant. So
Well, thank you. Yeah, it's one of those classic naming situations. Like the name I thought of right away was, of course, Taken, and then you'd go through the exercise of what do I really want to bring? What kind of conversations do I want to bring to the table? And then, you know, impatience is just sort of a part of me.
yeah, yeah, impatient and urgency are 2 different things, but I try and convince myself that they're similar. Um,
They
so
are cousins for sure.
yeah, for sure.
But that's true. I think certainly when I was growing up in the business that I'm in, working for someone for the first 10 years was understanding that a sense of urgency and having that as an innate quality is really pretty critical in a lot of businesses. Just, understanding that something needs attention or not, rather than just like putting the same pace on everything is, I think that is important discernment.
Yeah, I like the way you just put that. Putting the same or different pace on something. Yeah, I know when to throttle up or throttle
Mm-hmm.
back.
Mm-hmm.
For sure. And I guess speaking about impatient, I can be very patient about certain things. And I think it
Mm-hmm.
confuses the people I work with. They're like, how can you be patient about, I don't know, this appraisal I'm getting on this building? Like
Mm-hmm.
completely out of my control.
Right. Right.
So I can be patient on certain stuff.
Yeah, you say that. I think when I am most impatient is when it feels like it's in my realm. Like getting this podcast started, for instance. Like when we were right at the starting gates. I mean, I just wanted to shove it out the door and off the cliff as quickly as possible. Like I'm so excited. Let's go. But yeah, if it's out of
Uh,
my control, quote unquote, then it's a little,
Yeah, not to beat a dead horse on the impatient part, but I think there's the impatient entrepreneur that's content with 85, 90%,
Mm,
and then just figure out the last 10%.
yeah.
And then there's the perfectionist entrepreneur who
Mm,
is so patient that they're willing to get it perfect before they launch. And so,
yeah.
obviously I'm just kind of winging that description, but I definitely think part of being impatient is being willing to just dive straight in, knowing that the
Mm-hmm.
product will be just fine. But
Mm-hmm.
yeah. So
Right.
I loved your name and listened to all the shows because I was like, I got to meet some other people who are equally as impatient.
Yeah. Yes. I have some who are claiming to be patient, but potato, potato, potentially.
Yeah, yeah. Depends who's judging them. Yeah,
Right. So I would love to know, we've talked a little bit in our cohort about just books and things like that where but I would love to know what you do to fuel your like creativity or savviness or processes or like, what do you do to feed yourself? Your college degree is behind you. How did you grow as a business person and entrepreneur?
yeah. I didn't believe that mimicking, copying, or for lack of better words, mentorship was the path for me. I felt like I would always just be second best. I've kind of now related to like when your family owns a business and you're going to get it handed down. Like kids don't want to accept it. Like I want to create my own, right? Or or I'm going to be stuck in the environment you created. And had I known what I know now, I would have been totally fine copying some of the best people. And I'll give this small experience share, and then I'll dive into to answer your question. My brother was wearing red shirts with our landscape company. We were mean green. I was like, Michael, why are we in red shirts? And he said, because the best company in the world wears red shirts. And I said, okay, but if we wear red, then we'll only be second best. I would be totally fine being second best. So anyways, for my 20s to 30s, I didn't do any kind of growth other than self-taught. And although like I think it landed me where I'm at and it definitely thickened my skin, it's not the path one that I would recommend, or two is really like even a smart one, because especially now with audibles. So you and I talked, I do a ton of audible books. I've gotten to the point where I can speed them up pretty fast. I don't typically end or finish a lot of the books. I'm impatient, so I wanted to start that next book.
Yeah.
And I've accepted that it's okay. Like when I started, like when I realized that the only person that knew I didn't finish it was me. And especially cool with the business, right? Like the nuggets come. It's not like you missed the punchline at the end.
Right.
So I listened to a ton of Audible books, and those have then turned me on to different things, because a lot of the business books have referenced like, leaving conferences from the Maxwells or the Ramses or whatever else. And so I've, then go quickly research those. And so I try and do 3 or 4 different conferences that are working on me. For my coaching business, a lot of the conferences are like financially or time constraints, but typically it's financial, where people just can't attend because they're in the growth stage and all their money is being pumped into it. And so if I can gather the info, sift through what they need most, and deliver it at a quicker pace and cheaper, right? And so so I'm getting to do a lot of that. I'm part of EO, which has helped really balance some of my other areas, because EO is not just about business. It's about making sure that you can manage yourself. And then I still to this day believe that participating in EOA, and this is not a plug for the EOA, got me back on track and humbled me, and reminded me that there typically is always a beginning and a process. And if you skip those, then you're really missing out on the whole enjoyment of the whole thing developing. And so that's pretty much what I'm doing. I don't listen to music. I don't watch TV or anything. I mean, if I get an opportunity, I'm putting in a podcast or I'm putting in Audible. So, so that's where I'm at now.
And you run your business on, do you run traction, or is it scaling up that you run your business on?
I mean, I've been in front of traction, scaling up, Rockefeller. I did go through about almost a year of EOS. And that's a whole different story for another day. But we got far enough along where I got the big picture there. I've of course read traction, and of course scaling up is kind of the EO model, or EOA model, and then Rockefeller and all the stuff that goes involved there. And so I've kind of molded it for us, but we definitely we still call our meetings L10s. We still have our quarterly meetings, so we kind of take a little bit of everything, but we definitely don't use just one model.
Okay. I was trying to remember, because I think the first EOA strategy day that you and I did together, I feel like you were talking about some of those modalities that you had integrated. And so I wasn't sure if you were like an acolyte or
they're really, I mean, I'll tell you that the models are all very, very similar. So I think it's whichever one you understand most. And so maybe that's why we do one of one and one of another's, because it's easier for me to grasp or understand.
Yeah, we in the last year are definitely doing a hodgepodge, like a little cherry picking. I'm like, well, this one, makes sense to me in this way. So I'm gonna, have a VTO over here. And, we're running our quarterly meetings with the Rockefeller habits over here. And so we'll just kind of.
And speaking of those different models and the impatient part, right? If I think for me, as long as I know it's being talked about, or it's going to be talked about over a quarter or something like that, I can be more patient too. It's when
Yeah.
I have all this up in my head and I'm like, but where do I give it to you guys? And so ever since we implemented that, it's definitely at least calmed my nerves. And then even just taking that idea to paper, like half the time I'm like, man, I'm typing this up and that was a great idea 30 seconds ago. And so it is really helped put some of my ideas on ice and wait for the quarterly or weekly or monthly meetings. And so it's taught me to fuel my impatience by doing something, and then by the time we get to it, I've already moved on.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. That I definitely, that resonates for me for sure. Cause I will feel that impatient energy, and it's not anxiety necessarily, but there's like this gurgle of energy that just wants to burst out of me. I want to get something done. I want to do this thing. I want it to be implemented right now. But then, yeah, you start thinking about the quarter and the year, and you have to make, you realize this is not a sprint. This is a very long ultra marathon.
Yeah. And I mean, let's be honest, if you get to the end, then you just got to go back and start doing some more stuff. It's never ending, and so you might as well enjoy every step of it. So
right. Don't just totally burn out on the half marathon, because I have done that. I once many moons ago, back when I ran a little bit. Now I'm like, only if I'm chasing someone or they're chasing me. But I trained to walk a half marathon with a friend of mine, and the gun shoots that day. We all take off, and being the extremely competitive person I am, I ended up running the whole thing instead of walking the whole thing. And we get to the finish line, and I'm just totally cashed. And my friend eventually makes it across the finish line because she walked it as prescribed. And I mean, I can barely move. She's like, can you imagine turning around and running back and making it a full marathon? I was like, oh my God, no. I will never do this again.
Yeah.
So, okay. Oh, go ahead. You're going to say something?
No, it's funny. More the reason I don't want to do a half or a full marathon is what you just described right there.
Yeah, it's horrible. Very in a yoga now. So are you what are you going to do with Purple Coaching and Consulting? Like, are you building this as a business? Like, what do you kind of envision for it? Are you creating anything else right now? Like, kind of what's fueling your excitement?
Yeah. So the fun thing about Purple Coaching is it's mine. I don't have any people. I mean, other than the people at Magnolia who gets wrangled in. But so sometimes when I get creative juices, I can put it over there versus messing up a good thing at Magnolia.
Right.
I think that we have a tendency to do that a lot in business, where like things are going good, we have to mess it up. So most of my creative juices right now is coming from Purple Coaching, but the objective or goal when I first started was just to do something I really loved doing, which is helping and giving back to people and connecting with families. Because most of the people that I'm coaching are owner operated. They want to get back to their balanced life that they used to have, and somebody along the way told them that owning a business would give them more time, and it can. And so I like overnight I did a podcast and signed up 3 people. Like it was not a plug. I think they even used the word coaching like very quickly. It was almost in cursive, like fast.
Yeah.
And so I've been coaching them almost about 9 months now. We've seen tremendous success. I mean, they're hard workers, so it's super easy for me to claim any kind of success because they're the ones putting in all the work. They're allowing me to also consult. So of course, like what I believe the difference between coaching and consulting is actually helping do the work, and coaching is just, helping them get to that delivery. And so I'm doing some consulting or some fractional on there. Well, I was on another podcast and then ran a sales meeting across the United States. Didn't think anybody was going to show up. It was not intended for marketing. And I sent 32 invites and 28 people showed up. And so I was like, well, maybe I have something that people really need or want. And it's very lonely when you're doing a startup because you're your only person. And if I didn't have Magnolia, I would be lonely by myself too. And so, I instantly got some calls and I said, hey, listen, my goal is to onboard 3 people every 6 months, and every 18 months, hopefully those people that I've been coaching can kind of essentially graduate, similar to EOA. and they can just be mentored like one-on-one almost, and that takes a totally different kind of time and a lot easier time frame. And so we onboarded 2 more, so we're under 500 coaching consulting. Would love one more, and then we'll graduate one here in a couple, like 4 or 5 months. And so, anyways, so the goal is to hopefully just do it, just me, for the next several years. I'm intrigued with the some automation, so I'm finding out that there are a lot of accelerator type people, 250 to $1.5 million, that just need some classes and training that you could probably do through really intentional like technology resources. I'm really intrigued with a whole bunch of collaboration groups. So we do a lot of breakout sessions on Zoom and stuff like that. And so I haven't totally dialed in, but my overall objective is to help people scale properly. And that doesn't mean grow. That just means for them to balance their business and everything around it. And I was told the other day that they're really impressed that I take balance as an initiative. And I don't think we'll be successful if we knock out one pillar, which is, business. I want family and personal to be balanced.
Right.
And so anyways, I envision in the next probably about a year, like 10 months to a year, I'll be coaching Magnolia Fence and Patio as much as I coach my other teams. So probably 10 hours a week. 10 hours a month. And then I'll be doing the majority of my time on the coaching side.
Gotcha.
My team's phenomenal at Magnolia. And as long as that we maintain key hires and we make, smart decisions, that's where most of my time is. Be honest with you, about having a kiddo, so that might all change because one of the reasons I work for myself is I can hopefully determine where and when I work, and I want to be as available as possible. So we're going to work through all those different kinks over the next 6 months to a year, but we're not in a hurry.
Good. I remember my dad has been an entrepreneur, owned his own thing for my whole life. And the refrain I remember a lot is working for yourself allows you to work 24/7 or something like that. Gives you permission to work all the time. And I'm like, well, I don't want to do that.
Gives you permission. I like that. Yeah. Yeah. I enjoy working. I went on my honeymoon and I didn't have to work, and I realized that I wanted to. And at that exact moment, I knew that my goal was always going to be to do work that I wanted to do, not have to do. And obviously we all have to step in at some level, but I don't ever want to feel like I'm forced to do the work. I don't think anybody should feel that way, no matter if they work for somebody or for themselves, but I don't ever want to have those handcuffs on me. And so Purple Coaching will never feel like a job. I've 100% believe that. Financially, Magnolia Fence pays my paycheck, so Purple Coaching can be affordable for everybody. And so I'm just doing it through passion right now.
Yeah, it's good. It's exciting to have a passion project.
It is. Obviously, it's generating some revenue too, but that's not the reason why we're doing it. It's just getting to do stuff I enjoy doing.
Sure. Calling back to something you said a little bit ago, the period of time before EO and things like that, where you were just self-taught for the most part. And I think, anyone who's been an entrepreneur or like a high level leader, it can be so grueling to be in a self-taught space, like, and to be alone. Like I remember when I was joining EOA, a lot of it was because I just felt like I was only learning lessons the hard way. It's like, where is the lecture format classroom setting where I can learn them just by receiving information rather than just like grinding it out on the highway, going 60 in the first gear. So anyway.
Yeah. And I think everybody at some levels has to experience that, so they appreciate when they do find their group or their mentor or whatever else. And you got to understand like your limits, but whether it be my coaching or Magnolia, it is always easier in numbers, always. Yep. And I heard this in my forum at EO, and it was brilliant. It's like, hey, when you go snorkeling, or let's say you're in a swimming pool and you put on a snorkel mask, you don't you don't swim with anybody else, just you. But if you're going to go out to the ocean, you're going to dive 30 feet, you dive with a couple of people. They always say, don't dive alone. If you're going to go dive 100, 200, 300 feet, you dive with an entire team of professionals. And so, and obviously, if you look at the reward of those dives, bigger reward, but you have to have a bigger, more professional team. And so that's no different than business is, if you're wanting to go down and see the good stuff, you're going to have to put together a team, and that team could be your employees, or it could be your peer groups, or it could be your network, or whatever else. And so, I was probably too stubborn. Thought I could do it on my own. And I remember very clearly the day that I came to terms with that. Somebody said, "Has anyone ever told you ego ain't your amigo?" And it just summed it up for me. I couldn't believe my realtor told me that. And I was like, my goodness. And I didn't realize that I was letting my ego get in the way. But yeah, everything's easier, I believe, in a team.
For sure. Even if it's something great, not being able to fully celebrate with people who understand sucks. And then if you're struggling, just being in that echo chamber alone is horrible. And so actually, when my parents got married, part of their marriage vows was being together to divide sorrows and multiply joys. And I think I just carry that forward. Like, that's how I treat my clients. Like, we're there to celebrate together, and we're there to take away the sorrow also. And I think when you're alone, and again, it's lonely at the top, that you can't have the highs like they would with other people, and the lows just feel so much worse. So
totally agree. Totally.
Are you impatient about anything in particular right now?
If we're talking about business,
yeah.
No, I'm pretty truly patient.
Okay.
I had to pause for a second, because I was like, I'm going to be that third person on your podcast that says they're normally I'm extremely impatient. We've really dialed in our meeting rhythm, and I trust our meetings. And like, so if you want to break that down, like, if you trust that your meetings are productive and you can prove execution through KPIs or things like that, that has really put my impatience on hold. And then obviously I have some really great people, and I got to give them space. And so when I start getting in my head thinking I'm impatient, more than likely things have already been done, but there's no sense to celebrate half done stuff. So I've got to wait. And I typically ruin the surprise, right? Like, hey, Rob, so, but I've paused also because I was thinking that maybe it's just because all my attention is at home, right? So I'm really impatient at home right now. We have a kiddo on the way, 11 weeks. Yeah. I just want to get straight to the results. I want to check all the boxes, and I just want to hold my baby. I know everyone's that similar, but I think that's consuming most of my impatience. Is like, I'm like,
you're on the home stretch.
Yeah. I'm like, I understand I need to do all these things, but like, just give me my baby. I want to hold my baby. And so, and I would love to say I'm impatient on the Purple coaching. I paid $4,000 for my website name. I never would have thought I'd pay, but purplecoaching.com cost $4,000. And I was like, whatever. It's my only asset. And I hadn't done anything on the website. It's not from lack of like want to, just as like, that can just wait, because I just can't wait to get to my clients. And so,
they're obviously queuing up. It's not like you need that real estate to do something for you.
So, I mean, no, really, right now, I just want to hold my baby. That's it. That's the only thing. And we don't want to rush that.
No. But he needs to take his time cooking.
I'm at a really peaceful time when it comes to my patience on that.
My wife calm before the storm.
My wife will tell you that I'm extremely impatient, and naturally, like, when it comes to like, I always want to be early and stuff like that, of course. But big things like you're asking, I can't think of anything.
So I'm curious. This is purely for my, curiosity. But so you have a couple groups of little ducklings. You've got EOA plus the Purple coaching kiddos, I'll call. And sitting in these conversations and participating in all that, and you're what, obviously your goal is there as a guide. You're not supposed to tell us the answer. You're supposed to help, usher us toward the answer. Do you feel a surge of impatience kind of watching us sort of flounder around, or are you just very sanguine about the whole thing?
That's a great question. Especially EOA, the group that you and I are part of. We got some brilliant minds in there, and if anything else, the 3 or 4 hours we meet once a month is a good brain break from the monotony and getting to kind of put it all out on the table. So we haven't gotten into enough of that group to really determine, like, hey, here's the answer. I don't know if there is a right answer or not, but that's why I named it coaching and consulting, is when I feel like it's like enough's enough and we need to just go in like, hey, this is the answer that I found and it worked, and let's move on. I definitely want to be able to give that. So I'll give you a very small example. I was pushing this group to get their financials synced with QuickBooks because we had no accurate financials to go off of. And I realized it just wasn't being prioritized, or there wasn't enough time in the day, or whatever the case was. And I get it. You got to generate revenue to pay for this stuff. So, and so I just said, hey, can I just go ahead and implement this for you? There didn't need to be a teaching curve here. Sure. It was a task.
One and done.
Yeah. And so what I'm struggling though with, and I wouldn't say struggling, but what I'm trying to learn my boundaries is, like, I want it to be y'all's idea, because I want y'all to have ownership and collaboration. But when I'm seeing something that we're going in the wrong direction and it could potentially harm your culture or even your personal life, I feel like I have like I need to step in and say, time out, let's recenter. But like I said, I'm working with 5 people I'm working with, plus then the people in our group. So let's call it 10. They're brilliant minds. They just need somebody to ping pong off of. And so haven't really ran into anything like that. And I won't work for anybody who isn't ethical. And I think anything can be solved with integrity.
Sure.
Cool. But I know I'll face it on occasion. And I think some people are like, just shut up and tell me the answer. And I have no problem telling them the answer. I do not mind telling them the answer. But I definitely have seen better success when you derive to the answer on your own.
For sure. Right. Okay. So switching gears a little bit.
Sure.
Has there been something in your business life where it felt like when it happened, it was just the worst thing that's ever happened to you? You're like, I don't know how I'm going to recover from this. And then ultimately it turned out to be the best thing to ever happen to you?
Gosh. I'll be thinking of the other ones when I'm talking. I just recently had something happen. A client knocked us off a job, said halt all work. They were impressed with the work that we'd done. They just felt as if we'd gotten it to a stage where they could just take over. It's very, because
that's why you hire a fencing company.
Yeah, it was a huge project. And I don't know all the details, and I can't share all the details because we're still kind of working through some of that stuff. But long story short, there was a lot of money owed, and they felt as if there should be less money owed. So, and a lot of it. And so we had such a great year. I'm trying to keep this scarce because we're still trying to work through the details. But there was so much money owed and no guarantee that I was like, this could cripple all of our hard work for an entire year. And we had planned all these incredible things out because we had hit all of our numbers and stuff like that. And we stayed true. Like, we weren't in a position to afford certain things that we promised, but we did them anyways because we made that decision this thing had happened. Well, anyways, to answer your question, what came about this was we changed our entire billing model. Like, we could have rolled over and been frustrated. And we did. We took like the 24 hours to, mourn and be upset. Like, you got to do that. You got to do it. But then we changed our billing model, and it solved 10 other problems that we didn't even know were problems, And so that's one of the best things that happened to me, was it forced us to look at how we'd always done things. And so after I told that story, I was like, realized, man, I left out all the details, but I have to right now, so I probably shouldn't have said it. But anyways, but yeah, so just like that thing caused us to change how we did business, and we're super happy with it. Like I walk in every day and I have full control over the financials of the projects we're working on, and I love it. And it's fair for both parties. So that's one. Another one I can think of is me and my brother disintegrated our partnership. For any of the viewers or listeners, we never managed our partnership agreement. And some of it was because we didn't want to spend the money. Like, who would want to spend $5,000 on a relationship that works, right? Every single year. But when we were disintegrating, I felt like I was in a good position. Of course, he felt like he was one. And the attorney said, well, neither one of y'all know how y'all going to end up because y'all have no written agreement. And so it just depends how much money and how much time you want to spend. And talk about impatience. So you're telling me that there's no deadline. You're not telling me any amount of cash other that's going to cost a lot. And so it tore me and my brother's relationship apart because we were operating with no boundaries or rules. And what stinks about the deal is that we ended up disintegrating our partnership. Both of us felt like we had gotten taken to the cleaners. So nobody won out of the deal. And it took about 16 to 18 months for me and my brother to even communicate with each other. And so another best thing that happened was it forced me and him. We're still in very infant stages, but we're setting boundaries for our relationship, like I think anybody should, whether they're doing business or not. And so we maintenance those, and so we're honest with each other. So those are probably the two biggest things I can think of over the last 4 years. Other than that, I can't think of anything that was really detrimental. You know, we've had injuries and stuff like that I just thought we would never get over. But, you know, with enough time and money, you can solve almost any of that. So.
Oh gosh. Yeah, I can imagine that, you know, what at the outset of a business, you're with someone you probably trust more than anybody.
Close.
You're like, we're good. We got this, you know. We've got shorthand. We can figure this out. And then years go by and all of a sudden those rules of the road are not outlined and it's contentious because assumptions are at play.
Yeah, absolutely. And of course, nobody can give you any kind of experience or advice because you don't even have like a playing, like you don't even know like what playing board you're on. You know, Michael could be playing my twin could be playing Monopoly and I was playing Scrabble. Like, I mean, we were so far apart. And like anybody says, and I'll experience share it too, is we were making the most amount of money and bringing in the most revenue and had the most amount of employees. We had everything everybody wished for. And that's when it got really complicated between us. And so anyways, so those are probably the two in business that I can think of that really, really kind of made me stutter step a little bit. With Michael, I'll be honest with you, I chose to be consumed with it. And I missed some opportunities. And I'm not 100%. I mean, whether he was consumed or not, he took it as like, hey, we're going to use this as strategy and get better. And so like he entered my market. While I was so busy kind of playing like, you know, a totally different game, he was like over here just stealing our market share. Unlike this most recent one where we're like, hey, we could just, you know, drown in our sorrow, or we could just get up, dust ourselves off and fix what we can fix, which is our billing model. And so I think those experiences have helped us, you know, bounce back. I have some friends that are very upset for me for this most recent deal. And I'm like, but you haven't asked me how well my billing model is. Like, it's 10 times better than it ever has. Well, I'll give you the numbers. We were always operating about $450K in accounts receivable, money owed that was completed work. And now we're operating at $100K. So you tell me within 3 months, we've corrected. I mean, we've always had $500,000 or so owed to us. And just by making this small tweak. So we're happy with it.
No kidding. Yeah. It's almost like you just got to take your lumps and improve and move on. But a lot of people, and this is one of the reasons I ask these questions of a variety of people, because it's so easy to have something happen to you and let it pull you under, and to refuse to learn the lesson that is being presented to you, to refuse the opportunity to improve and to make sure it never happens again. It's just like, it's happened. I'm stuck. It sucks. I'm hurting. Everything is against me. Everything's happening to me. And to not own your part in it and see the path to the future. So I think just from my own experience, being able to be here today because I've taken these lessons and said, okay, well, what am I learning? One, and how am I not going to do this again? And how can I turn this worst thing into the best thing and move on better than I ever have before?
No, I agree. And you just made me think of this, like when you tell like this sob story, you're almost like telling on yourself. Like
Yeah.
I can't believe that I'm in this position where I'm not getting paid. Why'd you let it get that bad?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Well, I mean, I get that that gentleman's not paying you right now, but you're the one who let it get to this point. So
Right.
it's no different than like complaining about an employee. Well, but don't you control the hiring and firing process? Well, I can't fire him. So you're saying you're not very good at hiring people, because if you could hire good people, or you knew how to find new people, then you wouldn't be concerned about firing people. And so then you find out really the root is not necessarily firing the person, it's the fact that you don't know how to write a good job description to attract quality people. And so, yeah, I definitely, but I think it's important to mourn too, or be upset. Like you have to get all that out, and having groups
Yeah.
like EOA, EO, or having a mentor or something that you can speak it out loud and it can leave your mind, body, and soul. So
Yeah. Yeah. I think, yeah, I do. I'm glad you said that, because if you don't allow yourself to feel those feelings and to process that emotionally, you are going to carry that around. You got to kind of like let it make its way through your system, feel all the feels,
yeah,
and then move on.
yeah, yeah. And so, yeah, no, I agree completely. So.
Mhm. So when you were younger, was there anything about you that people made you feel like there was a piece of you that was a weakness, but really that's a personality trait that's turned out to be a strength and superpower as you've gone on to all this success?
I can tell you one that I know is a weakness, and people made me feel like it was a superpower.
Oh, the reverse.
Yeah, yeah, for sure.
Give me the
it-
Uno reverse card today.
yeah, yeah. So so my uncle, who I'm named after, we call him Bob, and then my mom. Every time I saw them, it didn't matter. They never said, "Hey, how are like." They would never actually ask the questions to figure out how I was.
Mm.
But they would always say, "I'm so proud of you," or they would introduce me. These are my twins, right? So this is my twin nephews, and they're the hardest working. Like, but you didn't ask me how many lawsuits I'm in and how many accounts received. Like, none of that mattered. Just like on paper, it looked like I was successful. Nothing. My mom never asked me like, "Hey, are you managing your relationships with your friends?" Like,
Mm.
it was never like, "Hey, this is my son. He's the best guy to be a friend." It was always, "This is
Mm.
my son who's this business." Yeah, I could just hear her now. It's just so cute, and he's so tough. And so my mom from day one and Bob too just saw the superhuman strength in both me and Michael, which was that we could outwork a problem.
Mhm. Mhm.
And so then they encouraged it. And
Mhm.
Michael said, if we didn't outwork this problem, we would have already lost our business. And that stuck with me too, because I think with enough like I guess time, any problem in business you'll solve it, right?
Mhm. Mhm.
Most people would have given up, and me and Michael just would never. And so I think that my superpower was that I'm willing to put in the work to work the problem. But had my mom just been like, "Son, I'm super proud of you, but this isn't working out,"
Mm.
I maybe would have been a little bit more humbled, or presented some humility. But instead,
Mhm.
like I can be like, "Well, mom and Bob think I'm doing great," and in front of
Mm.
30 or 40 business professionals, they don't know the whole story. And so that
Yeah.
was a superhuman strength that I wish wasn't um advertised, because it wasn't a positive, if that makes
Right.
sense.
Yeah, I totally
Um,
understand. I think from high school through certainly through my 20s, if not, definitely into my 30s as well. Um, I similarly, I remember one time in high school, I was up late working on physics or something like that. My dad came into my room and he was just like, "I'm so proud of you. You're just like, you're putting in the work. You're not letting it get you down." It's midnight easy. And I'm 17. And he was like, "Nobody will ever outwork you." And I'm like, "Okay." And I wore that like a badge of honor for years. And now realizing, rest is very important. You can't, like, I used to think, well, I'll just stay up all night and figure it out, rather than, well, if you don't get any sleep, there's a law of diminishing returns here.
Yeah. No, for sure. It's very similar. I mean, I remember when Vanessa, I hope she remembers this moment. I remember very clearly with my wife. She goes, gosh, when I first met her, you're so successful. And I was like, I think you're more successful than me. And she's like, what do you mean? I was like, you have great friends. You've accomplished a lot of personal goals. You just haven't really tackled your exact career yet. But like, success doesn't have to be business driven. But of course, our world, like, that's one of the easiest ones to like pinpoint. And so I wasn't successful in anything but business. I mean, and I don't even know if I was successful, but I at least. And so, like, similar to you, like, hey, if you put your mind to, you'll accomplish anything. Well, the one thing I wasn't putting my mind towards was my relationships, my rest, my body, and stuff like that. And so I just like, when I met Vanessa and when we had that conversation, I just realized, like, success is balance between all. I don't think you have it always balanced, but like, if business is up here and relationship here, at some point they have to switch. And so, for all the listeners, I'm moving my hands.
Yeah, so, sorry. That was all the levers up and down.
So in generally in relationships, and I'm not trying to move this to relationships, but you don't outwork problems in relationships. You love people and people love you back. And so, like, since I'm better at just putting my head down and grinding, that's why I think I've always gravitated towards business. And so anyways, that's what I've been really passionate about over the last probably five years or so, is trying to become a little bit more intentional in all pillars of my life.
Something that Alex Kleindienst, who's a guest on a prior episode, and I talked about, was that, a lot of times, but particularly when my kids were a little bit younger, they're almost 9 and almost 6 now. But when it was like in that really messy phase of toddlerish time, and not not a lot of independence there for them or me, really, I just would always kind of default to work, because I was getting that instant hit of, okay, I know I can be successful here. And if I weren't married and if I didn't have kids, I would just work all the time, because it feels good until it doesn't.
Yeah. No, I would agree for sure. And kind of going back to your title of Impatient Entrepreneur is, I mean, we always feel like if we just worked a little bit more, we'll accomplish that. But we've done this long enough to know that no matter how much we work, it will just create more work. There's very little downtime in businesses. And business has proven that if you just let it take its course and you scale properly, you will get, like you said, you'll win the marathon in better shape. So
yeah, I definitely had a moment sometime in the last year, last 12 months, where I thought, if I don't change how I'm doing things, all I'm doing is participating in a pie eating contest, and the prize is more pie. And I don't want to do it that way.
Yeah. No, and I mean, I'd have to ask my team, but I think one of the reasons why Purple Coaching has maybe been helpful for my team is it's allowed me to be creative, come with a bunch of crazy ideas. One, I get to share one or two ideas with each person I run into, or I'm witnessing how destructive sometimes having way too many ideas or impatience is through other people's. But it's giving me an avenue. Like, some people like to paint or play sports, whatever else. And since, like, you and I were talking about, our passion is still work. It allows me to work on something without disrupting the beat of the drum here at Magnolia. So
yeah.
And nonprofits, I'm sorry, but nonprofits or philanthropies, like, that's like, those are good things. Like, if you need to, like, what do I do with my hands? I mean, you don't have to even start another business, because they need all the work you're willing to put in. And so, just trying to find different ways to fill that for you. So,
have you read the book Free to Focus by Michael Hyatt?
No, I have not, but here I go. I'm going to add it to my Audible.
It's good. I read it a couple of years ago when it came out, and I got quite a bit from it, as far as what the importance around managing your time and therefore your energy, and how to, what you need to do yourself versus what you need to delegate or let go of. And it's, I think you'd enjoy it, and potentially, listeners, and then your coachees.
Yeah, no, I'm gonna download it. I try and listen to pretty much one book each way on an airplane, and so I will use my Audible credit for that.
Fabulous. So what is one piece of advice that you can give our listeners that they can do today to make their lives or businesses stronger or better?
So my favorite piece of advice, and if you've met me, you've probably already heard it, but since I don't know who your listener base is, I am a firm believer that you need to inspect what you expect and don't set rules you're not willing to enforce. And I want to go even further, because more than likely the people listening to this are business type owners. That goes for yourself as well. And so if you're not willing to follow your own rules, then you can't set them. But inspect what you expect. So many times we set expectations. I mean, similar to what we've just been talking about the whole show, is come up with this crazy idea. This is how we're going to do it. But then you don't realize that that's going to take some of your time away to manage it or enforce it or whatever else. And so inspect what you expect and don't set rules that you're not willing to enforce. And those go hand in hand. And I would start with the person that is setting those rules and expectations. And if you can't live by them, then I don't believe you should set them. I think that there's an ethical line that you're crossing if you want other people to do things that you're not willing to do. And so,
great advice.
To me, that is the best. And then the second one, since you asked for two, is because there's so many great books out there, and they've created such an easy way to listen to them. If you don't want to read them or whatever else, there is zero excuse to not be constantly learning. And you owe that to your team. You're going to learn from your team and the peers around you, but you owe it to your team to be meeting those advancements. And so I heard this, and I thought this was a really great idea, is that sometimes we get, when we wake up, we're not ready to get out of bed, or we don't want to turn on a light, or maybe we're not ready to go to bed or whatever else. And again, like with modern technology, someone just told me that I leave some AirPods next to my nightstand, and I just listen to a book for 20 or 30 minutes. And I was like, it seems so simple, but I was like, yeah. Because when my wife goes to bed, you don't want to turn on a light and flipping pages. And I was like, you know what? Maybe so. And so anyways, so that's when I normally, when I'm not on an airplane or something like that, that's when I try and squeeze in my 20 or 30 minutes. But
nice.
I don't think if you're not reading, you're no better than the person that chooses not to read or can't read. And so I think it's super important that you're constantly learning for your team and everybody around you.
Love that. So, very practical. I like it.
Yeah. And I have a ton of books I could recommend. My goodness.
Is there one, like, if the door to the airplane were closing, you're like, you must read, what would it be?
Yeah. Well, yes and no. I mean, so I think if you read books out of order, it will give you a loaded gun without instructions. So I think it's critical that you're reading them in order, right? So I think so for anybody, and I think most people have at this point, good to great. That sets the standard. Like, no doubt in my mind, it applies to anybody. And I think what I would do is actually, after good to great, I would send them to the Pumpkin Plan.
Yep, read that one.
Phenomenal book, because I think that will help you kind of identify your customer base and what you stand for. And then you can jump into the tractions, the rocket fuels and stuff like that. But if you were to ask me what my favorite book is, it's Never Split the Difference.
Oh, yeah.
And the premise, I got to tell you about this. This is how I interpreted the premise, is the gentleman was a 30-year hostage negotiator for the FBI. And he said, listen, I don't need to see the person who's holding people hostage, and I have to get 100% of the hostages out. And my day is not successful if we meet in the middle and I take half and he takes half.
Yeah.
And I was like, It's brilliant. He's like, know your worth and the things you're negotiating for. And so anyways, it tells real life stories about how he's negotiated hostages and other situations. And it keeps it a little less like businessy and more like, so anyways.
It's a good listen.
But yeah, the pumpkin plan is a really cool one too. It really puts in perspective the ability to say no to certain people. But have you read Good to Great?
I have.
Yeah, it's a good book.
I listened to it. I read it with my ears.
Yeah. So, and on that note, like, so Profit First is a great book, right? But if you're trying to listen to it, you're not going to like it. And you need to read that book. Scaling Up, you got to read that book.
Right.
Yeah,
gotta be able to highlight.
Yeah, even Traction. So if I was getting on a plane, I'd be like, "Are you reading it? Or are you listening to it? And are you in sales? Or are you in leadership?" So, but you get what I'm saying. So your listeners have a couple books.
Nice. We'll put those in the show notes. Speaking of the show notes, where can people find you? Where do you want people to go to learn more about you and hang out?
So of course, magnoliafenceco.com. That's my main business. Like and share all over the Facebooks, probably not in Fort Worth, but and then purplecoaching.com or robert@purplecoaching.com. I'd have no material out on it because most of everything people found is organic. I definitely would like to think I specialize in balance and scaling. But I can sell a tanning bed to a roofer. So I have lots of emphasis on sales and marketing as well. But yeah, that's where people could find me. I love talking business, whether it be for their business or they just have creative ideas. And so robert@purplecoaching.com or magnoliafenceco.com.
Okay. Well, I am so glad we got to do this. Thank you for coming on. I appreciate you.
No, for sure. I appreciate it too. I mean, we could talk for hours, so maybe we could pick up some stuff on the next one. So
sounds good.
Awesome. Well, thanks, Lauren. We appreciate you.
Thanks for listening to The Impatient Entrepreneur. Love the podcast? Be sure to share it with a friend or colleague or give us a 5-star review on Apple. You can also chat with us on Instagram or Facebook at The Impatient Entrepreneur Pod. Want to star on a future episode? Head over to theimpatientrepreneur.pod.com to inquire. Thank you to the team at Quidar & Co. for believing in me and bringing this podcast to life. And thank you to Carson Childers for mixing and editing this episode. Can't wait to see you next time.